Alright guys, I know it's been a minute since I did any new videos, so figured I'd go ahead and start back up on them. I've just been really busy. Um, and then I did another big partial buyout of parts from a company on the West Coast several weeks back, and then plus import and stuff. So I've been doing a lot of inventorying and then just life. So anyways, I'm gonna get back to doing videos again. Um, I still talk to a lot of you guys, like Frank and Nate and Danny and so forth, all the time. But a bunch of people have just been asking me, to get back to doing videos, so I'm going to. And, I'm just going to go over some stuff like people had asked about and had questions about and so forth, and things that, that they've heard. And so I'm going to start doing a little bit more of that too, getting back into more technical stuff with you guys. Just try not to overcomplicate it too much. So the first thing, I've been asked a bunch, like a while back and even recently again, is it true that a flat wound aluminum voice coil gives you greater X max? And it's just that's not true. No, it does not. It does not matter what type, like the composition of the wire used, as far as like calculating X max or affecting it. X max is like you take the wind height to the voice coil in correlation with the thickness of the top plate, and like I showed you guys before how to do the math. That would give you like like a baseline of your X max. So what I did here was just put a piece of tape on it, and then like did the math. On, like the center of my coil is below this line. It's right there, even with the top plate now. So when I put that line even with the top plate, that puts the center of the coil in the center, of the top plate, in the gap there. I showed you guys how to do that before too, like when you're mocking it up. So this is going to be a 15 with a 15-inch TI frame. You guys won't recognize this motor. It's an older motor. It's actually one of my motors. So to make it fit in the frame better, I grabbed an American-based 12-inch frame. So the next thing we're going to go over is spacers. So been asked the spacers, increase the X max, and so I'm just going to go over it and show you why, that it does not. So if we take this frame, set it directly on the basket, like so, and I got spiders back there that goes to the TI frame, but anyways, we're just, this is just for mocking it up. So we'll say that I've got, it's bolted directly, to the top, the frame is bolted directly to the top plate, no spacer here. So the coil is centered in the gap where it should be. And I'm going to use like this 12-inch carbon fiber tall roll. And it's real carbon fiber as well, not, it's not over like pressed or non-pressed paper. So I'm just going to set it on top. Now, the way that this sets, let's just say we calculated that voice coil and it's going to have 26 millimeters of X max, like one way. All right. So the spider would glue directly below the vent holes in the former, and then the cone, maybe like 10 millimeters up, 12 millimeters up, not quite a half inch. But anyways, if I glued it up just like it sits right now, frame to top plate, bolted directly to the motor, and the coil centered in the gap. So I got 26 millimeters of one-way X max right now. All right. So then I take and add a spacer, and I just grabbed like an old Sundown spacer. It's off of like an SA, like one of the version ones. It's just a solid solid spacer, no venting in it or anything. I think that is, I can't remember, 8 millimeters or so. I think it's about 8 millimeters. So now I'm going to set the frame back on top. And then I'm going to set the cone back on it. Now, all I've done is move the top assembly up like 8 millimeters right now. You know, the voice coil didn't move, and you know the top plate, you know, it doesn't move, so the coil's still centered in the gap. So when I had the basket, like the whole top assembly, sitting directly on the motor, we had 26 millimeters of X-Max, the way it was glued up. Now, the spider would be glued directly above the vent holes in the former, and then the cone, you know, has moved up an additional 8 millimeters. Just the whole top assembly, you know, is moved up 8 millimeters. But the X-Max is still the same. You know, it doesn't matter. Like once it's calculated, like say you know, once you got your coil centered in the gap, like, you know, everything's just moving up the former, up on the former, like 8 millimeters, the whole thing. You know, the basket's moved up 8 millimeters, so therefore the spider moved up 8 millimeters, and then the cone, you know, neck moved up 8 millimeters, the whole top assembly. So it's still going to have that 26 millimeters on X-Max. With spacers, um, like this is a solid one. There's no venting in it for, like, you know, to add any cooling. And when you would use spacers in an instance like this, let's say, you know, like the spider landing was down a little further, you know, closer to the top plate. So on the downstroke, it'll keep, you know, the top plate can get banged by the triple joint, like the triple joint could slam into it. I think that was a problem with the XV3 on the downstroke. So in the XV4, you know, the top assembly is, you know, is taller, and everything's moved up. You know, everything was changed on it except for the motor. And that additional clearance was given so that, like on the downstroke, the triple joint wasn't hitting the top plate. So you can also do it because if you space it, the triple joint further away from the top plate, you know, the voice coil opening in the frame, you know, you would hit the top plate before the frame. But now moving it up with a spacer, you know, you gave it more additional clearance from hitting the top plate. The ones that have vent holes in them, you know, that's for cooling and so forth, because some baskets may not be open like this. So I just wanted to clarify that, you know, putting a spacer in there does not increase the X-Max. It can, you know, help with, you know, mechanical failure, you know, on the downstroke, like I just explained. So, you know, I hope that, you know, we'll clear that up as well. And I've got some other stuff I'll get into in the upcoming videos. But anyways, I want to tell Frank, you know, thank you. Me and him talk all the time, and he sent me 4 DC Audio 10s that are like new, and in exchange, I'm sending him 2 older SJA Industry motors, 2 3-inch coil motors. They were off the RD Audio, like the Alpha Max. So basically, they're like a TC9 Plus, but like, you know, on steroids. Like they're significantly larger. Um, so I'm sending him those and a pair of coils, and I'm also going to throw in some 18-inch cones for him because I know he's going to be building some 18s. So, you know, thanks, Frank. I really appreciate it. And I was talking about Nate. You guys really need to check his channel out and subscribe if you haven't. Annihilation Industries, you know, he does phenomenal work when it comes to working with wood, like enclosures, boom boxes. I think he just did a surround sound. You know, his shit looks great all the time. Super nice guy. You know, you really should check his stuff out. So, anyways, I just wanted to do this while some of the other stuff's drying, and I got an 8-inch sub in a while back from Curtis, and he said it was locked up, and we talked about doing a recone, so he sent it over to me. And then I got it unboxed, and I figured like the coil had slinkied in it or something like that. But the top plate's actually shifted on it. It's why it's locked up. So we'll do a video on getting the top plate off and showing you guys how to, to do the top plate. There's several ways you can do it, but I'm just going to do it like the more, like do it like an easy way that you can do it. And we'll go over on how to do that. But anyways, I didn't want to make this super long, but I will get back to doing videos. Like I'll do the one building this out, doing, like the top plate on the 8 and then reconing it. And, I got the T1s I'm going to go ahead and build out. So I'll see you guys on the next one.